Great, welcome back. Let's not waste any time and dive straight into our tank movement script and see how we could have completed this module's main challenge. Okay, so if you chose not to watch the hint video before trying this challenge, but would now like to see me complete it in its entirety, then scroll up and watch that video now, as it's going to show you how I ended up with a function that looks like this. So we left off with an if and else statement to work with here. Now, as we know, the if statement is checking to see if both the input values on our axes are 0, meaning they are not being pressed. So because that would mean our tanks are not moving, this is when we want to tell our script to play our engine idle audio file. Firstly, we actually need a reference to that file. So let's quickly scroll up to the top of our script and make a new public audio clip reference variable and call it engine idle. Whilst we're here, let's also make another to reference our engine driving audio clip. And we'll also create an audio source public reference variable, which we'll call source. All of these we'll use to reference clips and sources after we've finished the main part of our script. Okay, so let's return back to our engine audio function. Great, so now that we have references to our engine idle clip, the first thing we could do once our script first detects no movement is assign that clip to our audio source. So we'll write source.clip is equal to engine idle. Following that, we simply tell our audio source to play. So we'll write source.play. Okay, now that we've set the engine idle clip to play when not moving, we can also use our else statement to set and play the engine driving clip too. Inside of the else statement, we will write source.clip is equal to engine driving, followed by source.play. Great, now before we can launch this code, there is something we must consider first. Let's say that player 1 is not moving. Our script would recognize the lack of input from the player and play the engine idle sound. However, let's not forget that our engine audio function is being triggered by our update function, which as we know runs on every frame of our game. So that means that our script would be telling our source to both set the audio clip and play it on every frame 60 times a second. Imagine that you're trying to play your favorite song on Spotify, but your friend is hammering down on the play button 60 times a second just to annoy you. That's how our script is going to play our audio right now. So obviously we want to tell our script to play our engine idle clip only once if the player isn't moving. How do we do that? Well, what we can do is add another if statement inside of our original one, and use it to only set and play the engine idle clip if the engine driving clip is already assigned to our source. So inside of the brackets of my if statement, I'll check to see if the source clip is set to the engine driving audio clip, and then cut our last two lines of code with Control-C or Command-C and paste them inside of the if statement with Control-V or Command-V. In fact, we need to do the exact same thing inside of our else statement to prevent the same issue occurring. The only difference is that we instead want to check to see if the engine idle clip is being used before we set and play the engine driving script. The only difference is that we instead want to check to see if the engine idle clip is being used before we set and play the engine driving clip. So let's now imagine that player 1 has spent the first 3 seconds of the game driving forward by holding the W key on the keyboard and has just let go in order to stop. On the first frame that the W key is not being held, our initial if statement at the top of our function kicks in because no axes input is being detected. The next if statement checks to see what clip is currently assigned to our audio source. Of course, it is the engine driving clip because the player was just driving their tank. Because that makes the condition true, the clip is then switched to the engine idle clip and then told to play. Then on the very next frame again, the player is still not pressing W, so no input is detected. Our second if statement checks again the clip inside of our audio source, but this time it's not the engine driving clip, it's the engine idle clip. Because that now makes our condition false, the clip is not told to set and play again unnecessarily. And it works the other way round as well. If the player presses the W key again, the if statement inside of our else statement would initially see the engine idle clip is inside the audio source, and thus would change it to driving. But on the second frame of the player moving, because the clip is now engine driving and not engine idle, the clip is not changed and the source is not told to play again. Now, the only way this system could break is if neither clip is assigned to the audio source, meaning neither clip would be set and played no matter what the player does. This system relies on a clip being assigned to the source before the player moves or doesn't move in order to work. Now, at the moment, our source doesn't have a clip assigned to it, meaning if we were to start the game now, no clip would be assigned by our system and nothing would be heard. So we must remember once we're back in Unity to assign one of these clips to our source manually before we test our game. I recommend assigning the engine driving clip as our tanks start stationary without receiving any input from the players, and thus our script will be checking for that clip before it plays the idle one. But in terms of script editing, we're done. So we'll save our script here and jump back into Unity. Okay, so before the game is tested, we'll need to assign our clips and source to our tank movement script component. So making sure to select the audio source at the very bottom of the inspector window, let's click on it and drag it into our audio source slot on our component. Then let's click on the audio clip fields and assign the engine driving and the engine idle clips to the appropriate fields. Finally, let's remember to assign the engine driving clip to the audio source itself in order for our script to work correctly. Lastly, I'm just going to turn the volume on the audio source playing my clips down to a very low level, as these clips are very loud. Then, just before you test the game, don't forget to save the prefab so that all your changes are set, and then give the game a test. Great, so straight away we hear the engine idle clip playing. Now if I move the blue tank with either W, A, S or D, we can hear the engine idle clip switch to the engine driving clip, so it works perfectly. I can then do the same with the red tank. And you should be able to hear the change most clearly by driving both of them at the same time. There we go, and of course, if you can't hear it over your music, feel free to turn that down for testing. Okay, now it's time to move on to a bonus challenge. The first bonus challenge asks us to randomly modulate the pitch of both clips as they are played. Now, we've looked at in the past how there are many ways to design a pitch modulation system for audio using C#, so really you can design yours however you wish. The way I'm going to design mine is by giving the user of my script component the option to select a modulation range. The higher the number they choose, the stronger the modulation. So I'll start by creating a public float variable, and I'll call it pitch range. For now, I'm just going to set mine to a starting amount of 0.2. Next, I'll create a new private variable called original pitch. This is going to capture whatever the pitch was first set to before the game starts, so that I can offset it later, which you'll see. Before I do that though, I actually need to capture the value of the pitch on my audio source. So I'll first scroll down to the start function. Then anywhere in the function, I'll set my new original pitch variable to equal the value of my audio source's pitch. So the reason that I've done this is so that whenever I randomize my pitch, I can randomize it from this value and keep the range at which it randomizes consistent. You'll see later as I implement it into our engine audio function why this matters. Speaking of which, let's scroll down to it and see exactly how we can implement it. So I'm going to randomize the pitch of my source just before I tell it to play anything new. So I'll start by setting my pitch to something new, and I'm going to randomize it using the random.range function. Okay, so for the minimum value that my pitch can be set to, it will be whatever the value of the original pitch was, minus the pitch range divided by 2, or half of the pitch range that was set. The maximum is then going to be the original pitch plus half of the pitch range. Remember, I'm using half the range to set the minimum and maximum values so that I don't end up randomizing my pitch by double the range. If you're not quite sure how that works, then don't be afraid to go back and check out our randomized modulation lesson in Module 2. And that's pretty much all I need to do. I will also copy and then paste this line of code to just before where our script tells our source to play the engine driving clip to. Cool, now all I need to do is save. Now if you're going to be testing this, I'd recommend testing with a high value for your range, such as 1 or 2, in order to really exaggerate the effect and make it clear to yourself whether or not it is working. Okay, so for bonus challenge number 2, all we have to do is prevent the audio echo filter attached to our tank's prefab from processing the 2 new audio clips without removing it. Well, this one's actually super simple. All we have to do is select the bypass effects checkbox on our latest audio source. And job done! The echo filter and any other effects that we may wish to add to this game object will not affect this audio source. A nice little change of pace there before the very final challenge. So our final bonus challenge is to send our engine audio clips to their own audio group in our mixer so that they don't duck our music's volume. To do this, we'll want to send our latest audio source that plays our engine sounds to a group in our audio mixer. Now you might think to send this source to the sound effects group that we created previously in this module, but as we know, anything playing through the sound effects group will cause the music group to duck in volume. So we'll need to create a new group for our ducking sounds that doesn't affect our music group. To do that, let's start by opening up the audio mixer window. From there, we'll create a new group, which we will call Tank Engines. Now, other than creating the group and making sure that it is routed into the master group only, there isn't much else to do. You can, if you wish, adjust how loud the engines will be played at the group fader, which I recommend. I'm going to bring mine down to about minus 28-ish. And that's our new group set up. Now all we need to do is send the output of our audio source to it. So let's go back to our complete tank prefab, then scroll down to the audio source that is playing our tank sounds. Finally, let's click on the output field and select our latest group. And that's it. Our audio source will now play audio through that new group, which won't cause our music to duck. Let's also go back to the audio mixer and let's keep it open as we play our game. And of course, don't forget to save the prefab itself. So our game has started and we can hear our tank engine sounds sitting nicely under the music. It doesn't appear that the music has dropped at all in levels too. We can compare this to how the levels look when either tank fires their cannon. And as the sound effects play, we hear and see a clear drop in the music. Okay, great! And with all of that, we now have tank engine sounds that change as the player moves for each tank. And with that, we have now not only completed the challenge for Module 4, but we've also completed the Unity Audio Mastery course. So congratulations, you did it. There's been a lot we've covered over these lessons that you can use to put your own audio into Unity games all by yourself. And now that you've gone through every lesson, I encourage you to go back to some of these from time to time as you start implementing more audio for different purposes to keep the knowledge clear to you. Sadly for now, there is no more content for you to enjoy. However, if and when any new content gets added to this course, you'll get instant access to them all, including new lessons and extra features that will come in the future. Now, of course, Unity is always changing, which means software updates are inevitable. So thankfully, when new lessons come to cover these topics, you won't have to purchase anything else to access them. On a personal note, thank you so much again for not only giving this course a try, but seeing it through to the end. I hope you found it helpful and have enjoyed implementing your own audio as much as I have creating this course for you. If you have any questions about the future of this course or any issues you'd like to talk to me about, you're more than welcome to email me at henry@scottgamesounds.com. And if you want to share your thoughts and feedback about this course, you'll find a little section underneath this lesson on the course's lesson select page, where you can leave a review for other students to see. Both positive and negative reviews are super helpful to me as they provide a window into these courses from a student perspective to anyone considering to sign up. And they also just help keep me feeling positive whenever I struggle to make content. So thank you ever so much in advance. And also, if you did enjoy this course and found it helpful, any mentions on social media such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn would be fantastic, as that's another really helpful way to help get these courses out to other audio professionals like you and I who need them. And with all of that out of the way, thank you so much for one final time, and I wish you all the best in your game audio adventures. I've been Henry Scott. Thank you very much for watching.